Hey everyone, today you're going to learn everything you need to know about vlookups to be an awesome analyst, so let's get started right now. To start a vlookup, type enter vlookup. You're then prompted to enter 4 different inputs. The first input is the lookup value. The lookup value is a specific value for which we want to return more information. In this case, we're looking up employee ID 103. The table array is where you're going to go look for employee ID 103. We have employee ID in column F, and we want to return last name. So we're interested in columns F, G, and H. So I usually just highlight the whole column. The column index number says, when we find employee ID 103, which column do we want returned? Since we're looking for last name, we want the third column. First column, second column, third column. Range lookup, you always want an exact match. Exact match means it's only going to return a record that matches employee ID 103 exactly. 0 is synonymous with a false match. Since it's less characters, I usually type in 0. Close parentheses, enter. Let's take a look at what the formula is doing. The first thing to remember about vlookup is they only work left to right. So your lookup value needs to be in the furthest left column of your table array. In this instance, we're looking up employee ID 103, and employee ID is the furthest left column. And it's only going to work from F to the right, and it'll never work from L to the left. What vlookup is going to do is it's going to scan this employee ID column until it hits employee ID 103. There's employee ID 103, and it stops once it hits the first instance. It no longer keeps looking for 103 once it finds the initial 103. It then says, which column do I want returned? Well, I want the third column. So first column, second column, third column. And that's Tom Bodo, and that's exactly what the formula returned. Let's do a few more vlookups just to make sure we're comfortable with them. Enter vlookup. This time we're looking up employee ID 707. We want to look it up in columns F, G, and H. Now if you look, as I scroll across these columns, different numbers appear. 1C, 2C, 3C, 4C, 5C. That's Excel counting the columns for you, so you don't have to. So we want last name, and that's 3C, so we just type in 3. Range lookup is false, 0, enter. Paxton. The formula says find employee ID 707 in the employee ID table, and then return the third column, 1, 2, 3. So that says it should be Paxton, and the formula returned Paxton as well. Let's do one more, equals vlookup. And instead of typing in 399, you can refer the formula to the cell containing 399. So we're just going to refer it to A6. We're still looking up last name from the columns F through H. We want the third column index. We want an exact match. It says, look in this first column for employee ID 399. Once it hits it, return the third column, 1, 2, 3. says it should return Martuni, and that's exactly what it returned. One of the best features of Excel is you can drag formulas across cells. For example, we can rewrite this formula in cell B4 so that we can drag it down and we don't have to keep rewriting the formula over and over again. So we'll add a few extra values here to show you the benefit of this. So equals vlookup, refer it to the cell, and we can just drag this formula down. So we don't have to keep rewriting the formula. Now what happens when you drag the formula to the right? Well, we get an error. But if you see here, it says lookup A4 in F through H. When we drag it to the right, it says lookup B4 in G through I. So we dragged the cell to the right, but it also shifted our lookup value in table array to the right. What can be done about this problem? It involves the F4 key, a key that you might not have paid much attention to until you started doing vlookups. The F4 key allows you to lock inputs in your formula and drag it successfully from cell to cell. So what exactly does that look like? If you click in your formula, and we'll look at the lookup value, press F4. As you press F4, dollar signs appear in various combinations around your value. And these dollar signs allow you to lock your lookup value in place and drag it from cell to cell and not incur the problem that we did when we dragged our formula to the right. So what combination of dollar signs means what? Switching tabs, I've built this dollar sign matrix to help you understand which combination of dollar sign leads to which result. We're not going to go over this line by line, but it is available on howtoanalysts.com, and it's a good reference guide as you start to play with locking cells. Let's go back to the Sales tab and play with these different combinations. Let's get rid of these formulas and test the effects of the F4 key. So for the sake of this example, we're only going to look at the lookup value. We will worry about locking the table array later. So click on your lookup value and press F4, then enter. So to test this, we're going to drag the formula down and we're going to drag the formula to the right. Now again, we're not focused on the table array, so this is giving us an error. But if you look, no matter where you drag to the formula, the lookup value remained A4. $2 signs mean that your lookup value is locked regardless of where the formula is dragged. Let's delete these two formulas and try the next combination. So you click on your lookup value and tap F4 again. So now the dollar sign's in the middle. We'll drag the formula down, we'll drag the formula to the right. So A4 remains the same when you dragged it down. The dollar sign in the middle allows the lookup value to change when you drag it to the right. So the dollar sign in the middle allows you to drag the formula left and right, but not up and down. Let's delete these formulas and test the last combination. Click in the lookup value, tap F4. Now the dollar sign's on the left outside. So let's drag this down and we'll drag this right. So with the dollar sign on the left side of the lookup value allows us to drag the formula down and that value to change. But when we drag it to the right, it stays on employee ID. Let's put this whole formula together and then we'll add in an extra trick at the end. Equals vlookup. So the lookup value is employee ID, and we don't want this to change as we drag it to the right. So like we just saw, if you tap F4 3 times, this will allow the lookup value to change as you drag it down, but will lock it in place as you drag it to the right. Now the table array is columns F through J. But we want to lock this table array in place as we drag the formula to the right. We don't want the table array to shift to the right as we drag the formula to the right. We're going to lock this in place so it doesn't move in any direction, and that's tapping F4 once. The column index number for last name is 3, and the range lookup is always 0. So let's drag this down, and it looks good. The extra tip and final modification is we're going to type the column numbers that these represent above each cell. So last name's in the 3rd, regions in the 4th, and region ID is in the 5th. In the same way that you can refer a lookup value to a cell, you can also refer a column index number to a cell. So rather than 3, we're just going to refer it here. Now, we don't want that cell to change as we drag this formula down, but we do want that cell to change as we drag the formula to the right. So that means tapping F4 twice. This will allow the column index number to change as we drag the formula to the right, but it'll keep it the same as we drag the formula down. Drag the formula down, drag the formula over. That's how you write a VLOOKUP formula that can be dragged from cell to cell. How do you write a VLOOKUP formula across tabs? We're going to go to another tab and answer the question. This is the HR tab, and it contains information about the employees, but it doesn't have any of the sales data from the sales tab. So let's bring in sales region from the sales tab into the HR tab. Equals vlookup. We're going to look up the employee ID, and for best practices we're going to lock the employee ID in case we want to drag the formula. Now the table array is on another tab, so you click on the other tab and highlight the table array as you normally would. As you can see, it's already telling you that it's on a new tab with the sales exclamation point. So we want region and region ID. And just for best practices, we're going to lock up the table array as well with our F4 key. So the column index number for region is 4, and the range lookup is always 0. Close parentheses and press enter. Excel then takes you back to the tab on which you were writing your formula, and you're good to go. We can drag this formula down. For the sake of example, we can drag this to the right. Because we locked it, it works. The only thing we need to change is column index number from 4 to 5. And now you've got an HR tab with some sales data. Often you're doing lookups off of data exported from a software program. For example, salesforce.com or SAP. There can be complications in doing this, so we're going to dive into those right now. Here's an export of employee IDs from our HR software. So we want to bring in sales for these employee IDs from the sales tab. equal vlookup. Lookup value is the employee ID. Table array is here. We want sales, that's column 6, and an exact match. So as we drag this down, you'll notice that we're getting an error each and every time. And the error stems from this little green coloration in the upper left-hand corner of the cell. That means that these cells are formatted as text. Often data that comes from a large software program like SAP or SalesForce.com is formatted as text. What we need to do is convert these employee IDs from text in order for our formula to work. To do that, we highlight our employee IDs. We go to Data, Text to Columns. In this instance, all we need to do to convert these from text is press Finish. So as soon as we convert these employee IDs from text, the VLOOKUPs work and we can successfully bring in sales. So you now know everything you need to know about VLOOKUPs, but there is one final component. Excel formulas are rarely used in isolation. They're most often used in concert with one another. We're going to walk through one final example where we layer some additional Excel formulas onto our VLOOKUP to complete our analysis. Here we have two different sets of data. We've got sales for 2015 and sales for 2014. We're going to compare 2015 sales regions to 2014 sales regions to see if there's a story to tell. To do this, we're going to say equals vlookup. We're going to look up region ID in 2015, compare it to region ID 2014. Column index number is 1 because we really just want to know if those regions are there. Enter, drag the formula down. A #NA means that this value doesn't exist in this list. So we've got a few #NAs here. Looking at these, Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, and Mexico, it might be a safe assumption that this company built out their international operations in 2015. So they went global in 2015, and that's a nice piece of analysis. But #NAs can look a little sloppy, especially in a report. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert an if error formula. So to insert an if error formula, go up to the formula bar and type if, then error. So what if error is going to do is it's going to look at the VLOOKUP formula. So that's the value portion. And if it's an error, it's going to add something instead of #NA. So we'll say not in 2014 if it's an error. Type enter, and let's drag that down. Not in 2014. So that's a lot cleaner way to present your data using an if error statement rather than just letting those #NAs stay there. We added the if error statement, so we cleaned up the data. Now, maybe your company has a lot more regions, and so the list would be a lot longer. So you don't want to just manually count how many not in 14s there are. There are 5, but if you've got hundreds of regions, you're not going to want to go through and count them. So what I like to do is paste your value indicating that it's not in the list. So paste not in 14 as a value up here, and I use the Countifs formula. Now I do have a video on Countifs on howtoanalyst.com, so we're not going to go over that here. We're just going to show how other formulas work with VLOOKUPs. Countifs, so the first thing is the criteria range. where are we looking for this value to count? We're looking for it right here. The second component is the criteria. We're looking for not in 2014. How many instances of not in 2014 are in this criteria range? Close parentheses, enter. So we've got 5. As you're walking through your analysis and explaining the difference between 2015 and 2014, it's a pretty critical piece to note that they added 5 sales regions in 2015 and they happen to be international.